Hi, this is Pam from Wood Camper Crafts. Welcome to my Never Have I Ever Crocheted video. If this is the first time you're crocheting, this video is for you. Before we get started, you'll need some wool and a hook. I'm using the Wool Ease Thick and Quick. If you look on the back, you can see that this is a super bulky yarn. It has a number 6. When you're starting off, I recommend a thick yarn. You'll want to find something with the number 6 or something that says super bulky on the back. On the back, it also shows you the recommended hook size. This one says 9mm hook. In this video, I'm going to be using a 10mm hook, which is slightly larger. I find using a bigger hook when you're starting off is easier. I'm dividing my video into 4 parts. Lesson 1, I'll teach you how to hold the yarn and hold the hook. Lesson 2, I'll teach you how to do the slip knot. Lesson 3, I'll teach you the chain stitch. And lesson 4, I'll teach you how to do the single crochet. Once you know those 4 basics, you can start crocheting. So let's get started. This is lesson 1, where I teach you how to hold the crochet hook and hold the yarn. Here's my crochet hook. I'm using a 10mm hook, which you can see it says 10mm right on the front here. There's this flat piece at the front of my crochet hook, and if we turn it over, there's a flat piece at the back. I am going to place my index finger on the flat piece at the back and my thumb on the flat piece at the front. My remaining fingers, these 3 fingers here, I'm going to use to hold the neck of the hook. So this is how I hold my crochet hook in my right hand. I'm going to hold the yarn in my left hand. I place the yarn over these 2 fingers and underneath my pinky. By doing this, I can use my pinky to adjust the tension on my yarn. I then use my index finger to move the yarn around. When you're crocheting, you're going to be doing something called yarn over, which is taking the yarn and placing it over top of your hook. This index finger is used to move that yarn around. So I yarn over with my index finger. So you can see I can use that finger to move this yarn around. So once again, I hold my yarn in my left hand over top of these 2 fingers, underneath my pinky. The pinky is what I use for the tension on my yarn. I can adjust it. My index finger is used to move the yarn. So I can yarn over. And that's how you hold the hook and hold your yarn. Welcome to lesson 2. I'm going to teach you how to do the slip knot. You need a slip knot to place your wool on your hook. I'm going to take the yarn, and before I do a slip knot, I always leave a tail of yarn, about 3 or 4 inches long. You'll need this tail so that you can weave in the end when you're finished your work. I'm going to take the short tail here in my left hand, and I have the yarn that is attached to the rest of the ball here in my right hand. And I'm going to just do a simple loop. So you can see this piece is attached to my ball of yarn and it's on top. And then this shorter end is underneath. I'm then going to take the piece that is attached to the ball of yarn and I'm going to stick a loop up through my hole here. I'm going to grab onto that loop and take both ends and pull. And there we have a slip knot. You can see if I take the long end and pull it, I can adjust that knot. I'm going to take my hook, place it through the loop, pull the long end to tighten my slip knot onto my hook. And there you have a slip knot. Your yarn is now on your hook and you're ready to begin crocheting. This is lesson 3. Now that we have our yarn on our hook, I'm going to teach you the chain stitch. The chain stitch is the first stitch we do to start off our project. So holding our hook in the right hand, once again you have your index finger on the back on this flat piece and your thumb on the front. I want to hold our slip knot in place so that it doesn't move up and down the hook. So I'm going to take this tail here and I'm going to put it under my fingers and just hold on to it. You can see that my loop is a little loose, so I'm going to just first of all tighten that a little bit. And then once again, I'm going to take the tail and hold on to it with my fingers here. Then I've got my yarn in my left hand over top of my 2 fingers underneath my pinky, and I'm using this to move the yarn around. The first thing we're going to do is what we call the yarn over. You can see by using this pinky here, I can really adjust the tension on my yarn. So that's really important as we get started. So I'm going to take my index finger here and I'm going to take the yarn around back of the hook, up over top, and hook the yarn underneath. So I'm going to make sure that I'm putting tension on that yarn so it doesn't slip off the hook. So you can see I'm using that pinky to pull and apply tension to my yarn. So I can loosen up the yarn or I can use that pinky to apply tension. I want to hook the yarn under. And then I'm going to, while I'm applying tension here, I'm going to take our slip knot in my left hand. And now what I'm going to do is I'm taking my hook and I'm sliding it down. My yarn is going underneath the hook. And in order to get through this hole, you can see I'm pulling down. So I'm using these 2 fingers to pull down on the knot and make a hole to get my hook through. If I pull like this, it's not going to go through. So as I'm pulling down, my yarn is catching under my hook. I'm going to now turn my hook so that I can get it through the hole here. I'm going to pull through the hole and I've now completed my first chain. So let's continue this. I'm going to take the tail here. I'm going to put it back in my right hand. I'm going to use this index finger to yarn over. So remember, you're not going this way. You're going behind your hook and you're taking your yarn over top and underneath the hook. Once again, using my fingers here so that I have enough tension on my yarn so it doesn't just slip out. So it's very important to use these fingers to apply tension to your yarn. I'm then going to use these 2 fingers and grab onto my chain. As I'm pulling down, I'm catching my yarn underneath my hook. I want to make sure that I'm pulling down enough so I'm creating a hole or a gap for my hook to fit through. As I pull down, remember, we want to turn the hook so that it can go through the hole. And I've now done my chain 2. Let's continue on. I'm going to grab the chain in my right hand, yarn over top of the 2 fingers, underneath our baby finger, using this index finger to move the yarn around and using this baby finger to apply tension to the yarn. I'm doing my yarn over, going around back, up over top of the hook, hooking the yarn, using the fingers to make sure we have enough tension so it doesn't slip out. Then I'm taking the chain with my left hand I'm pulling down on that chain. So I'm creating that hole there for my hook to go through. As I pull down and catch the yarn with my hook, I'm going to start to turn it so that I can get through the hole. There we go. We've completed our third chain. Let's keep going. Hold the chain in our right hand. Use this finger. We're going to yarn over. Then I'm moving the chain back to my left hand, pulling down on that chain to create that hole. As I slide my hook down, I catch my yarn and I turn so I can get through my hole. We now have 4 chains. Let's keep going. Yarn over. Hold the chain with my left hand. Turn my hook to grab the yarn as I pull through. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. We're going to do one more. Yarn over. Grab the chain with your left hand. As you pull down, catch your yarn and turn your hook. And now we've completed our chain of 11. This is lesson 4, my final lesson in the Never Have I Ever Crocheted video. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you the single crochet, which is the most basic of all crochet stitches. We're going to be working our single crochet in rows, and we're going to be working 10 single crochets per row. So I know that we did a chain of 11, but the reason we're only going to have 10 single crochets is that when we start off, we're going to be working in the second chain from our hook. So here's our hook. This loop here is our first chain, and this loop here is our second chain. So when we start, we're going to be starting in the second chain. Before we start, you need to know where you're going to be placing your hook. When you're working in your chain, you want to make sure that it's flat. You don't want it to twist as you're working. When we're looking at it here, you can see we have a top loop and this bottom loop. We're going to be working in one loop only, this top loop, and we're going to be sticking our needle, you can see just in that hole there underneath your top loop. So when you're going into your chain, you're going in just to this hole here underneath that top loop. So if you look at it from the top, you can see your chain. So here's that top loop, there's the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So starting off here, I said we're working in our second chain. So here's our first chain. So our hook is going to go just underneath this loop here. So start off by inserting your hook. And then we're going to be doing our yarn over again that we did in our previous lesson. So take your yarn over top of your hook and hook it underneath here. Once again, I'm going to be holding my work in my left hand and pulling it out so that as I pull my crochet hook, it fits through that hole. You can see that I have 1, 2 loops on my hook and then my yarn that I've put over top. As I pull through, I'm only going to be pulling through this loop here. So it helps to hold this back loop here with your finger, keeping it out of the way. As I pull my hook down, I'm going to turn it to catch that yarn, and I'm pulling through just the 1 loop. As I come out, I turn my hook back up so I don't lose my work, and I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm now going to yarn over again. I'm going to pull down on that work to create that hole I can get through. And I'm now going to be pulling through both loops to complete my single crochet. So remember, as you pull down, hook your yarn, you want to turn so that you can get through both of your loops. I've now completed my first single crochet. When you're looking at your chain, this is the hole that you just worked in, so make sure you don't put your hook into that hole. This is our next hole here that we want to work in. So you can see here's your top loop and there's your bottom loop, and we're sticking our hook in between so that we just have 1 loop that we're going under. I'm going to take my yarn, I'm going to yarn over, holding my work in my left hand to create that gap by pulling down. As I pull down on my crochet hook, I'm turning to catch my yarn. I'm holding this back loop out of the way, and I'm pulling through just 1 loop. I now have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, and I'm now going to pull down, turn my hook, and pull through both loops to complete my single crochet. So let's look at our chain, make sure it's not twisted, make sure it's nice and flat. This is the hole or chain we just worked in, so this is going to be our next one here. You can see we're just going underneath this top loop here. Insert your hook. We're going to yarn over. I'm pulling down with my left hand so I can create that gap to get my hook through. I'm holding the back loop out of the way with my right hand, and as I pull down on the hook, I'm turning it to catch my yarn, and I'm pulling through just 1 loop. I now have 2 loops on my hook. So we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through both loops on our hook to complete our single crochet. Let's do this one more time together. So we've just worked in this loop here. Let's look, here's our chain, there's our top loop. So we want to go right in here. So insert our hook. We're yarning over. And remember, you can hold this back loop out of the way, pull down with your left hand so that your hook can fit through the loop. As you're pulling down, you want to catch the yarn and turn and pull through just 1 loop on your hook. As I come back out of this, I turn up and have the hook facing me so the yarn does not fall off. I now have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, hold my work with my left hand, pulling down to create a gap. As I pull on my hook and catch my yarn, I'm turning and I'm pulling through both loops on my hook to complete my single crochet. I'm going to keep working, and I will meet you at the end of the row. You can pause this video if you'd like, and just take your time to finish off the row. I'm almost finished my row. I've left the last stitch just to show you. This is my last stitch here. It's easy to miss that last stitch, so it's very important to count when you're doing your rows. I'm going to insert my hook. This stitch can be a little bit more difficult to get into, so you may need to give yourself a helping hand. Just make sure you're getting under both of those loops there. I'm going to yarn over, pull through both of those loops. I now have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops to complete my final single crochet. If you didn't count as you were going along, you can also look at your stitches and count them. If we look at it from the beginning, this is our first single crochet, our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, and our final one at the end. When you get to the end of the row, we're going to use that chain stitch again. So what we do at the end of the row is we chain 1, yarn over, catch your loop under the hook or your yarn under the hook, pull through that loop, and you've chained 1. Now I'm going to turn my work. So I'm turning my work around this way, and I'm now going to be working my 10 single crochets back this way. Our first stitch, we did that chain 1 so that we can work in our first stitch, which is right here. If you're not sure where your first stitch is, before you get started, you can count. So you can see here's a hole here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can continue doing that to make sure that you're starting in the right place. So my first stitch is going right here. I'm going underneath both those loops, inserting my hook. You can see there's 2 loops there. I'm doing my yarn over, pulling through those 2 loops. I now have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops to complete my single crochet. So you can continue on doing 10 single crochets in each row. When you get to the end of the row, you chain 1 and you turn. I would recommend that you keep practicing this until you feel comfortable. If you make it long enough, you'll have your first scarf project. Once you feel comfortable, you can start learning other stitches, which I have video tutorials on my channel you can check out. When you've learned your other stitches, I've got a great beginner hat tutorial called the Seymour hat, which you may want to check out. If you like this video and want to see more, please hit subscribe.